In January, a United States Supreme Court special master concluded Nebraska's new Republican River irrigation regulations are sufficient to keep the state in compliance with the Republican River Basin Compact in dry years. UNL Extension water law specialist Dave Aiken joined us earlier this week to discuss those plans and how they date back to a 2002 Republican River Compact lawsuit.
In response to the lawsuit from Kansas, the NRDs and the Republican Basin have put allocations on how much water irrigators can pump, and have also said no more new wells. And that is good enough in normal years, but in dry years, we've ended up being over how much water we could legally use.
When you say dry years, what does that technically mean, and then how often would that be likely to occur?
Well, under the compact, if the lake levels in Harlan County Reservoir are below a certain point, then that's considered a dry year. But historically, we've been in this dry year thing for well over half of the time for the period of record, so it's a pretty frequent occurrence.
Right. 2006, as you're looking at something like this, 2006 was an important year. Why was it important from Nebraska standards?
Well, it was the first year under the new compact accounting rules that we officially came up over how much we were able to use. We were about 8% over what we were supposed to use that year, and so we were in violation of the compact.
And the response from Kansas was what in that situation?
Well, they said that we needed to shut down about 1 million acres of irrigated land in the basin to stay in compliance for dry years in the future, and also give them a lot of money.
Right. Well, that's just kind of a kicker there. So what are the plans that Nebraska is now proposing here?
Well, the Department of Natural Resources and the 3 Republican Basin NRDs have agreed that if we are going into a dry year, that the NRDs will tell the farmers in the so-called rapid response area close to the river that they will not be able to pump that year.
At all?
At all. Unless, example, if we get rains or something like that.
Sure, okay.
But the expectation would be going into that year, you're going to be dry.
Wow.
And that was a big step. That would be the first time that we would have cut off existing surface groundwater irrigators in Nebraska, so it's a pretty big deal.
And under that situation, I mean, that would obviously fall into compliance with anything that would be necessary.
Well, the Department of Natural Resources actually modeled it. They went back and modeled it, for the last several years, which are some of the driest years on record, and we always came up, in the green zone. We're always legal if that restriction was imposed.
Kansas is okay with this? What's their recommendation on this?
Well, they like their original proposal better, but fortunately for us, the Supreme Court special master said no, the model shows that the Nebraska plan would work.
Right.
And so, we're going to give Nebraska a chance to go with this, and of course, if it doesn't work, then we'll look at it again.
So under the situation where Nebraska irrigators wouldn't be allowed to pump, would they be reimbursed or paid anything under that scenario?
My expectation is that they would be. It's the regulations don't require it. However, I think that the NRDs would do that when push came to shove.
This is obviously going to be a point of contention, not necessarily only in this area, but across the state. But specifically, what are the NRDs doing here? Well, how are they tying in?
The best thing that, one of the great things that they're doing is they're trying to figure out how can we get more water into Harlan County Reservoir by January 1st so that we don't have to trigger this dry year regulation. And to that extent, they've purchased basically a big irrigated ranch in Lincoln County. They've shut off the irrigation wells, and we're going to use the water in dry years to go down to the Republican or even to the Platte. They have that capability, but they can go either way. But go down to the Republican, put water in Harlan County Reservoir, so we avoid that dry year trigger and those tough groundwater regulations.
What role does the state of Nebraska play, if any, here?
Well, the state, these projects are expensive. This is a multi-million-dollar project. The NRDs could use help, and we have the LB 517, I believe, Water Funding Task Force, which is meeting right now. They will make their final recommendations to the legislature in December, so that's something to keep an eye on. But that's what they're looking at funding projects like this to help in areas where they need it.
In related news, the Upper Big Blue NRD will hold a public meeting to discuss proposed changes in their district. If adopted, those regulations would require all wells pumping 50 gallons per minute to be metered by January 1st, 2015. Currently, only wells with that capacity are metered if they were installed from 2004 on. The regulations would also establish a 5-year allocation of 45 inches per acre, or an average of 9 inches per year, if groundwater restrictions are triggered in the future. The meeting is scheduled for November 5th in York.